Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews, and today it's another Rotted Request, where I hand the keys over to my patrons and let them take the wheel, telling me what they want me to watch and review. And today's film comes to us from Patron Caleb, who recommended the 2001 film Trouble Every Day. And when I asked Caleb why this movie in particular, he wrote, "It is a very fascinating and poetic film." No real disagreement there, but the question remains, did I like this movie? Did I think that it was a fantastic watch? Well, let's find out. Written and directed by Claire Denis and also written by Jean-Paul Fargeau, this movie introduces us to the characters of Shane and June Brown, played by Vincent Gallo and Trisha Vesey, respectively. And Shane and June are honeymooners. They are going to Paris to be on their honeymoon, but it's pretty clear right from the outset that Shane has other ideas in mind. Ulterior motives, if you will. Likewise, we're also introduced in a very odd, frenetic, and violent way to the characters of 𝗘𝗾𝘂𝗶𝗽𝗺 and Leo, played by Béatrice Dalle and Alex Descamps, respectively. And they also play husband and wife, however, not really newlyweds. They've been married for quite a while. But the relationship dynamic is a little bit odd because, well, 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶 is a little bit odd. She seems to need to be locked inside the house, and if she manages to escape, she finds unwitting victims to seduce and then murder. The two couples' stories come together when Shane reveals that he is looking for Leo, that's his ulterior motive of being in Paris, to track him down, as Leo is a neuroscientist and they have a history together that is related to 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶's afflictions. And the general notion, the overall theme of this film is lust. Lust in a primal way, an unhinged, what if the brakes were taken off the human psyche itself and lust was allowed to run rampant until you were basically just wanting to consume your partner. There's a whole lot more to it than that, about trustworthiness, so on and so forth. But that's essentially the core element driving the characters at the very least. Now, as you might imagine, this movie is extremely sexual and extremely violent at the same time, usually, honestly, together. And looking back on the Rotted Requests for August, I'm thinking that we have Crash, we have Trouble Every Day, and we have The Samurai. And I'm kind of thinking that, what are my patrons telling me? These are very violent, sexual movies in general. But getting back to this movie, there's a whole lot about this film on a bullet point level that I really did like. However, if I had to evaluate the entirety of the film as a whole, which I kind of do, I'm going to admit that it really didn't work for me. I am not a big fan of Vincent Gallo at all as a director. I do have to admit that he actually did manage to pull off a pretty darned impressive performance in this film. Trisha Vesey as June, his new wife, was a heartbreaking role. I thought she performed this very well. And Béatrice Dalle, Béatrice Dalle, she is... She confuses me so good. I thought she did a fairly decent job as 𝗘𝗾𝗂𝗶 in this film. No real complaints here, but I do have to admit that I preferred her performances in Inside and Livid better than this film. I think my biggest criticisms of this film would be its narrative. And I mean everything that drives that. The sequencing in which it was written, the sequencing in which it was edited, everything about how it actually told the story of these characters was fractured and vague. And I don't really mind that necessarily. I think that, the films that encourage that level of deep thought and introspection and conversation are often the best out there, but this one was just a bit too fractured for me. It didn't really gel as a story. I was following along with these characters, trying to decipher what was going on with the screen, and in a world of tell, don't show, or show, don't tell, this is a movie that kind of elected to do neither and just left a lot open to interpretation, which again can be fine, but it does become a little bit of a mental stretch, and you do really count on context bridging that gap of narrative between the filmmaker and the audience. And in my mind, for me, that gap was a little bit too wide. And I think this is one example in which anybody that's going to be talking about Trouble Every Day is going to have to address the ending. I'm going to keep this spoiler free. I'm going to use some vague words and so on and so forth, but just generally talk about my thoughts on the ending more than the ending itself. I don't know. It wasn't that shocking to me. There were preceding moments in the film that I could kind of tell where things were going. I mean, this is a film that was kind of already racked with violence and sexual tension and so on and so forth. The fact that it actually went further than that, went to the nth degree on both levels, was, I guess, in its own way shocking. In its own way, a little bit disappointing. I mean, it almost felt like, considering the nature of consequences and the lack of that befell some of the characters, it felt a little bit less like violence portrayed as art and more like celebratory shock value. And in my mind, that's not quite the redeemable content that I would prefer. I know I'm floundering a little bit here vocabulary-wise, but suffice it to say, I didn't really find the ending to be that shocking, but I can see how others would, and I can also see how they would find it disturbing and difficult. So yes, Caleb, I did find this to be interesting, and I found it to be poetic. Some great performances from pretty much every actor on the screen. But from opening credits to closing credits, I would have to say that this was not my favorite movie, and although I appreciate the artistic qualities embedded within, as a storyline and as a narrative, it fell flat. But thank you for the request, and thank you for putting this one in front of me. I don't think that I would have watched this one, and I'm glad that I got the opportunity to. So thank you, Caleb, for recommending this one, and thank you out there for watching this video. I look forward to seeing you on my next one. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.